and welcome to episode 65 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and with me this afternoon I have Club Chairman and East Midlands Section Secretary John Griffiths, Alfa Female Supremo, GT Registrar and Thames Valley Section Secretary Kirsty Hodson, and Management Team Member and MiTo Registrar David Faithful. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So we've got a lot to talk about. It's been a long time since we've done a roundtable. It's the end of July, I think, just before National Alfa Day. So events is probably a good place to start because we've had a pretty busy summer, haven't we, David?
Yeah, well, we started with Southwest Alfa Day down in Dorset. We went up to Scottish Italian Car Day in Edinburgh, and then, of course, ended up with National Alfa Day at Bicester. But, I mean, so we'll come back to National Alfa Day, but we've since done Southern Alfa Day, Northern Alfa Day, and we're in the middle of planning the days for MITCAR and the NEC. So, yeah, really very active summer. That's an understatement, to be honest.
And I don't think I've ever driven so far to AROC events over a summer and still managed to miss out on National Alfa Day. I managed to do Southwest Alfa Day and Scottish Italian Car Day in a week, and then up to Northern Alfa Day last weekend. So lots of miles on the Alfas, which is good.
Absolutely. I mean, we probably need to talk about National Alfa Day being such an absolutely gigantic event and success. A heck of a lot of planning had gone into it, but for us to be rewarded with some glorious weather and around 2,000 people along, just absolutely phenomenal. And a lot of effort went into making it the success it was. But looking at the lighter side of it all, it's the first event in ages I've been to where we've had the awards about 3:00-ish and it's carried on. People haven't cleared off. The band carried on playing. The sun was shining. Everybody was making merry, effectively enjoying the cars right through till getting on past 5:00. It was just terrific.
And we had a lot of people. Well, I made a point of trying to speak to people who brought children to families and so on. And the feedback about just small things like having the go-karts, free face painting, having a land train so that the little kids didn't have to walk, 10 miles to get around and see everything. Suddenly the kids were more into seeing all the cars because it was on the back of a land train as opposed to walking 100 miles. So there was a lot of things that we tried to do that we thought might work for families and youngsters, and the feedback was, yeah, it really did work. So I think there's some really good lessons from what we sort of gambled on for some aspects of the program. We've certainly learned from that, and we'll take some of those ideas forward for sure.
And there was a lot of social media buzz. I was tucked up on the sofa with a Lemsip tablets and a fleece blanket, but just watching the number of photo and video posts during the day about what a good time people were having was really good.
Well, we paid everyone to do that just to annoy you, actually, Guy.
I mean, one thing that was a particular success, although incredibly challenging for us organisers and marshals on the day, was the track element of Bicester Heritage. And it went from an idea of, let's have a couple of groups of parades to one heck of a lot of cars enjoying the circuit. For some, it was the first time they've ever driven an Alfa Romeo on a track too, although it was designed as a parade. But we may have to remind that Stelvio driver who was practicing his race mode about that bit of it being a parade. But that was just tremendous. And but yeah, what an effort to make it happen. We've certainly learned a lot from that as well, haven't we, David?
Yeah, and I think, look, not everything went swimmingly on the day. Almost all visitors won't have spotted where something went pear-shaped, and that's kind of a good result. But, the sign-on process turned into a nightmare, and there was a bit of queuing and things. I mean, generally people were still delighted to get on the track and love the day. I just think there's a lot of moving parts, isn't there? And on the one hand, we knew about them. On the other hand, we didn't realise how overwhelming some of that might be on the day. So, yeah, we need more people. We need slicker processes and so on. But it's nothing we absolutely can't overcome for the next time.
No, but I mean, just looking back to it, seeing 30 plus 4Cs together orbiting the track was tremendous. I mean, how often has anybody seen that?
Yeah.
Just seeing anything really. The Alfa Championship race cars going round and making a lovely racket was was great fun. And then certainly the Alfa Suds, they were just sensational. I mean, 63 Alfa Suds together in one space. I mean, I've been to almost every National Alfa Day since 1985, and even back in the 80s. I don't think there were 60 collected together at Stanford Hall down the road from me. Just amazing. That was so enjoyable. And just the background, as you say, the Italian band there just added a super atmosphere, and them doing kind of 20-minute sets just flowed throughout, I felt. There's an awful lot we can pick up and adapt for next year.
Let's not forget, it was the first time probably 80% of visitors had ever seen a Tonale, and we had 3, and they were on the track, and we were giving test drives. So the Alfa test drive guys, they were just constantly in and out of the site giving test drives to prospective customers. So I mean, that was it was a big win for us to have 3 Tonale there, but it was, Alfa said to us afterwards, didn't they, that was an incredible event, because it was really, they felt part of it, the cars felt part of it, people felt they could just walk up and speak to Alfa Romeo UK and try the new Tonale. That was a really positive experience for people, I think.
Definitely was. And there were plenty of displays all over the place, and a really good one, of course, was the launch of the Alfa Female group of AROC, which Kirsty was absolutely part of.
Yes, that was really good. We had our little stand, and we had lots of ladies came in, parked with us, and we had so many visitors to our stand who didn't know that it existed. So this was the first main launch of it. I think next year we do need to be in a slightly more prominent position, maybe by the main tent. But nevertheless, we did have a lot of visitors. We gave out a lot of leaflets that advertised our Facebook group, which is now nearly 200 members strong. And a lot of that is off the back of NAD.
Yeah.
And we gave away a lot of car stickers, and we gave away a lot of teddy bears. Not just to little girls, but to bigger girls too, who seem to be even more keen on them than the little girls, to be quite honest. So, well, that's our audience. And there was one really nice thing that happened. A lady wanted over to talk to me, and she was going on a European trip, and she was going to take an Alfa Romeo bear with her. So I talked her into taking an Alfa Female teddy bear with her. And that bear is called Aria, and it has taken on an entire Facebook page on its own now. It's off, and it's travelling around. So yeah, the first owner of Aria, first caretaker, took her from up Gateshead Way down to Kent, through into France, down to the south of France, over to Florence, through Switzerland, through all the tunnels, had a lovely tunnel run, back to the UK, and then was handed over to a new caretaker at Northern after. So new adventures. It's quite fun.
And so has the bear got its own Instagram account, or is it, how can people follow where the bear is and what it's doing?
The bear has its own Facebook page, a group, and all the updates are being posted on the Alfa Female group.
For those of us who don't qualify for the Alfa Female group for obvious reasons,
there's a separate Alfa Aria Bear page.
Okay, we'll put a link in the notes to the podcast as well for people who want to follow that.
Awesome.
Well, that was good fun. And as you say, made an appearance at Northern Alfa Day, which returned this year after a kind of a practice event last year as a Yorkshire Alfa Day at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park. And this year we were at Lotherton Hall in just outside Leeds. Some amazing cars there, amazing variety of cars. But I think a first for me in 20 plus years of attending AROC events is the first time I've ever seen a dealer turn up with a full-size car delivery transporter, almost full of cars.
Yeah,
with another 2 Tonales, a Stelvio Quadrifoglio and a Giulia. Made quite an impressive entrance.
Certainly did. And Arnold Clark did us proud there with the sponsorship of the event. And David Slocum, the senior sales guy there, spent all day chatting to people. A great to see a right-hand drive Tonales as well in just the straightforward Veloci spec, which with the Alcantara trim and a fantastic 19-inch diamond cut alloys really looked the biz to me. And there was a lot of interest around that. And I agree with you on the event as a whole. The Nicholas Williamson, the section secretary there, and his Yorkshire team did a super job of the whole day. Really, most of this year at events, I've been running around wearing my high vis and doing a million jobs. It was great to actually this time just really enjoy the day and go and chat to people. And that was my main job, apart from presenting the odd prize at the end of it. And it was really enjoyable.
And it was 160 cars or so. And the thing that surprised me was there was a huge variety of cars. So there weren't many examples of anything, probably more examples of things like current Julia than anything else.
Yeah.
But there was 2 or 3 of almost everything.
Yeah. And they were scattered. So you had the joy of walking up and down the rows and coming across different jewels as you went, all kinds of things, and just odd rarities like the Alfa 90 that appeared late on at the show. That was good fun. The 2600 Spider that came second, that was an absolute beauty, and one a lot of people will never have seen. I could go on and list dozens, but I'm sure we'll have a feature in, I think it's going to be the December magazine, isn't it?
It is,
Guy?
Yeah.
But no, the team up there did a really excellent job, I must say, and they're already getting excited about next year. So we'll see where Northern Alfa Day ends up.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that back on the calendar and events all the way from the Devon, Dorset, Somerset border for Southwest Alfa Day all the way up to South Queensferry for Scottish Italian Car Day. It's very much the full length of the country, and not very many gaps in between either, is by the time you add in Northern Alfa Day.
Yeah, and we're next going to be filling in the Midlands with the much delayed Midlands Italian Car Day, or MITCAR as it's known, that I've been involved with since 2001, actually, with Brian Alexander, a dear friend of mine that sadly passed away in 2019. But he had the idea of us using Kedleston Hall for a kind of country park afternoon, a straightforward car display, a relaxing day. And we're going to do that again this year at Kedleston Hall. So this is going to be in its 21st year, and the 20th edition, as we couldn't hold one in 2020 thanks to COVID, unfortunately. But we're going back to the countryside. We had to postpone it originally from June into September, and then Her Majesty passing away meant that we just couldn't run it with the National Trust on the planned weekend in September. But we moved it to the 9th of October, so it could be a really nice late season event. I keep having an eye on the weather forecast, but lots of crossed fingers. We were pleased to see, actually, that we'd sold over 250 tickets. And with the beauty of online ticket selling, we can send an email to people instantly to let them know of changes. And we only lost half a dozen that were unable to make the new date of the 9th. So that all works really, really well. So we're all geared up for that.
We were certainly lucky with the weather at Northern Alfa Day on the 25th of September, which is already late for an event. It was a mostly sunny day, but I would recommend probably a coat and a jumper for MITCAR.
Yeah, definitely come October. Bring it all with you.
Alfa branded, obviously.
Alfa branded,
yes.
Yeah.
Owners Club hoodie.
Yeah. And Nick will bring a stock of umbrellas that you won't need.
Yeah.
But just in case.
I was surprised at how many people were buying Alfa Female baseball caps now.
There was a lot, and young girls as well. So as I walked around later in the day, the number of young girls and women carrying a female teddy, an Alfa Female teddy, and wearing a baseball cap was quite phenomenal, actually. It was almost every female I saw.
Yeah, which is
a lot
great.
of men were buying them too, the hats, because it was so hot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a good business idea, isn't it?
Definitely.
Just before we leave National Alfa Day entirely, we put a short survey out afterwards, and I just wanted to. Well, look, there's a couple of key takeouts. Hundreds of people filled out the survey. We're enormously grateful for that, because we asked a number of questions, which was free text. We've gathered hundreds of bits of feedback, good and bad, and we absolutely are going to take all of those on board and learn from them. But look, there's a couple of nerdy stats which I did want to just tease out, which was 86% of everyone who responded said it was really good value for money. And incredibly, 89.9% felt satisfied or really satisfied with the club for National Alfa Day. So, I mean, they're brilliant stats. I've run some, work type events and other events in the past, and you're lucky to get 65% of satisfaction. So these are really good stats. But to be clear to everyone who responded, we are enormously grateful. There's hundreds of bits of feedback. We are going through every single one, and we'll take every comment that anybody has on board, and we will try and get better. So look, brilliant feedback. I thought the 86% thought it was great value for money. I thought that was a real stonker, really, because we'd planned so many things. It's an awkward balance being a not-for-profit, that we're not trying to make money out of the event, but we don't want to lose money on the event either. So it is difficult working things out so that we break even and the ticket price is healthy for people, and particularly for people with families. So yeah, I was pleased with that. But look, there's a lot of learnings from it, a lot of really, really brilliant feedback from people who completed the survey, and that is on our to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're already beginning to design next year's events. It's going to keep a track feature. We're looking at some additional things. We'll be moving things around so it feels fresh and we get the right things in the right place. For example, Kirsty's Alfa Female area, and we'll just keep it all fresh, basically. And we're also going to do our best to ensure that our volunteers are not overstretched in areas where we know some of them were this time.
And there's some really simple things in there. People loved that we put hundreds of deck chairs out, but there wasn't enough shade. And that's a simple thing to fix. They loved that we put on facilities, food and drinks, but then you started running out of water middle of the afternoon or after lunch. So there's some really simple things we can address that we thought we'd covered, didn't quite cover, but we absolutely will next time.
That's it.
And I think we've got one more event really after MITCAR before we finally close the 2022 event season.
Yeah, and that's going back to the NEC for the Classic Motor Show from the 11th to the 13th of November. We always enjoy a stand there, a display there rather, and we're in the Premium Hall again. This year, I will give the game away that, we've said this year we would be really celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Alfa Sud in the UK. So that is the core theme. But we'll also have a couple of other treats of cars that were made at Pimigliano, including a number of boxer engine models. And of course, it's an excuse to feature a new Tonale for members to see as well, although that's perhaps a future classic one day.
It's always a really fantastic show, the Classic at the NEC, and tickets are on sale already for that. And there's an AROC discount code.
That's right. Yeah, you can get that from the member forum, and it's going to be in the October magazine as well. So don't miss that one.
And if you want to go for more than one day, there's probably still hotels available as near as Edinburgh or Cardiff.
Definitely, there's some around the corner. We know that. So even, but yeah, it's always a lovely end of season event. I enjoy seeing people who flock to it. Our pals often come over from Ireland and take a cheap flight down from Scotland at that time of the year, for example. It's great to see people and have a chat. And again, all the cars there are going to be Alfa Romeo Owners Club owners' vehicles. So the invitations have gone out just today, believe it or not. And we're going to have a super variety from the earliest to the latest. Can't wait for it.
Brilliant. So that'll round off the event season. There's a couple of other things we wanted to talk about. One of them, which we're not quite ready for people to use yet, but we're getting ready to relaunch, which is the parts service, David.
Yeah. Well, as people will remember, the parts service has been on hold for quite some time now for a number of reasons, really. One is we had issues around the storage, but the main reason really was trying to get the business model to work. Because again, it's another one of these things that because we're a not-for-profit, we're not in business to make money. We're in business to deliver benefits to members. And one of the problems with the parts service was we've got all of these parts, and if we just sell them to anybody and everybody, that's not really a member benefit, is it? So we've restructured it all. We've got the new parts service being set up as we speak. All the parts have been repatriated into one place. There's over 3,700 individual parts. There's quite a lot. We've gone through and itemized them all. They've all got a unique barcode, if you will. They're all on shelves and in picking boxes and so on. We're updating the website, and we'll be good to go live in 2 to 3 weeks. There's a few things that are slightly different. So we've really sort of honed in on this being a member benefit. So we want to provide the service. It's a parts service, not a parts shop. So we want to provide the service to members. So when they need parts to maintain their Alfas, to keep their Alfas on the road, that's when we'll be there for them. The other really key thing is that we're not a retailer of parts. We're sort of curating the parts. We're trying to ensure that we keep these parts in a maintainable state so that as and when a member needs it, which could be next week, but it could be in 10 years, the part is there for them to maintain their Alfa. So yeah, I think we're changing the model quite a bit actually, but fundamentally it'll be for our members. When they need a part, hopefully we'll have it for them. And we're not in it to make money. We're absolutely in this for the long term. It's about curation of those parts and providing a service to all of our members for future generations. Obviously over time we'll acquire more parts, but I think we're going to try and be a bit more selective, because I think, I don't necessarily want us to go out and buy, a bunch of parts that are readily available at Shop for Parts or Alfa Shop or other partners. You need to sort of tailor it a bit to those parts which are harder to get hold of, harder to come by, more rare. And so that in essence, it will provide that sort of assurance to our members in the long term, rather than, just trying to pump out parts and make a quick quid. That's not what we're in it for. So yeah, in the coming weeks, so where are we now? We're recording this around the end of September. Certainly by the end of October, when the October magazine drops and lands through your letterbox, the parts service should be up and running. And we'd love people to check out what we've got. If you need anything and we can help, fabulous. If you don't, no worries. We'll be there in a few years when you do need something. Yeah, we've been really keen to get this back on track as a member service. So we are very close and almost there. But yeah, by the time the October magazine lands, the new parts service should be up and running.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, David. I think the other thing we wanted to talk to, it's hard to believe, but it's almost exactly 2 years since we lost Jon Dooley. And I think it's really important that the club continues to remember Jon and the debt that the club owes to everything he did from, pretty much from day one until a couple of years ago. So a couple of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. We had our second annual Jon Dooley Memorial race in the virtual racing, in the AROC racing leagues, all based around cars that Jon drove. So GTV6 and Alfa 75s in Napolina and John West liveries. We even managed to repaint bits of the Snetterton track, so the Bentley straight became the Dooley straight for the day. And then we did lots of testing to try and get the GTV6 and the 75 performance to be about the same, and couldn't quite get there. So we put our pro drivers in the slower 75 and put the AMs in the GTV6 to give those guys a bit of an advantage, which I was very grateful for. I won race 1 and had a cracking race with Jack Hodson from the Kent and East Sussex section in race 2. He just managed to stop me winning both rounds, but a really enjoyable evening, and really nice to see those liveries that a lot of us grew up watching racing for real, racing in the virtual world. And because I set it all up, I got first choice of car. So it was particularly nice to win it in Jon's iconic Napolina livery. And if people want to see that, that's still available on YouTube. We've edited that down a little bit if people want to look at it. And then probably the more serious and significant event that Jon and I were at, actually yesterday, in terms of when we recorded this, James Dooley and Jon's partner Meg organised a memorial kind of get together, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To remember Jon, which was a fantastic event. Again, people there from every era of the club right back to the beginning. James gave some really emotional words as his part of the presentation. And then we had Bob Dove, who was his race engineer during the Alfa Romeo dealer team. Jeff Gordon, who runs the Giulietta TI at the Goodwood Revival and worked closely with Jon to make sure that car was right for the period and tapped into all of Jon's expertise. Nick Atkins, who I think shared a Giulietta. Shared a Giulietta with Jon. And of course, another ex-AROC chairman who took on the role twice, thanks to Jon, Ed McDonough. And then some fantastic group photos of everybody around the Napolina Alfa Sud that Chris Whelan had brought up, flanked by a 1900C Super Sprint Zagato, a Giulia Spider, a Giulietta Bellina, and a Duetto Spider. Just a fabulous day. Yeah,
it really was. And seeing so many people there, it was a great get-together, because a lot of people like that don't get that chance to get together. But we were all there, sharing memories, lots of smiles as well, I must say, and fascinating conversations as well throughout the day. But it was quite an emotional thing, helped by the fact that Jon's brother James, who was hosting it, is the absolute spit of him and has similar mannerisms. So it was really quite unusual from that perspective, but really warm at the same time. And I really, really enjoyed it throughout.
Yeah.
And
it absolutely was a celebration of his life.
It was a celebration.
Lots of funny stories about Jon, and I knew him latterly, haven't known him for long, but, the stories from people who've known him for decades all rung true.
What was that one that somebody discussed about him when he'd entered the Monte Carlo rally and the driver behind him complained that his brake lights weren't working? And he said, no, I didn't use the brakes. They only slow you down.
But again, I mean, that was a good example. I think 3 people had a part of their story was You couldn't keep up with him because I couldn't see his brake lights, which was because he wasn't braking.
Yeah. And then the other brake one was where he was literally racing to get to scrutineering at an event in his Fiat Panda, and he managed to throw a brake pad at the back. So he came into a corner and the car rolled, and two ladies were stood at the side of the road and saw him stagger out of the passenger window and then get to his feet, just about looking rather shaken. And they asked him, "Are you all right?" He says, "Yes, I will be." And they all came over and said, "Look, can you help me to get it back on its wheels?" And they literally picked the thing up, got it on its way again. Absolutely incredible stories.
And again, one of two stories. Did the same thing, rolled I think it was a Fiat Uno in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
Got out, picked up the windscreen, threw the windscreen in the back of the car and then drove off.
Carried on, yeah. But he was a tremendous driver, I must say. These are unusual events.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really good event.
I think that's probably all we've got time for this episode. So thank you all for coming together, and let's try not to leave it another 3 months before we do another roundtable.
Yeah, great.
Thanks everyone.
Guy.
Thanks a lot, everyone. See you soon.
James had asked me to perhaps say a few words at Jon's memorial, but in that company I felt a bit of a fraud. I'd known Jon for a couple of years and the others had known him for decades. But as I knew him through the magazine and as an early guest on and supporter of this podcast, I thought I'd share my thoughts here. I'd watched a bit of motor racing on TV since the mid-70s, but my first ever in-person motor race was the 1982 British Grand Prix meeting at Brands Hatch, aged 16. Other people tell me that Derek Warwick, running at the front of the race on half tanks, was unforgettable. But what I remember is a mini Metro barrel rolling in front of me and showering me with broken glass, and Jon Dooley winning Class B in his GTV6. It was over 4 years later that I got my first car, an Alfa Sud Sprint Veloce, and as I got more and more interested in the Alfa Sud, in Alfa Romeo in general, and in the Owners Club, Jon's name was never far away. But it wasn't until 2018, when I took over the club magazine, that I got to know him. I received a phone call out of the blue to find out what I had in mind for the magazine, to make sure it was in good hands. He wasn't proprietorial about it. It wasn't about being in control. It was about making sure that the magazine evolved and continued to deliver articles of interest to an increasingly diverse membership. It was the first of many phone calls. He would phone me during meetings with clients while I was at my day job, and I would always apologise and explain to the client that I had to take the call. I wanted to take the call. He became, in a very short space of time, a mentor. As the first lockdown hit, he was hugely supportive of the initiatives we had in place to keep members involved, particularly the podcast on which he appeared, and the virtual racing. He even researched the spec required for a gaming PC before deciding that he'd leave it to the youngsters like me. I was 54 at the time. I contacted him, having been let down by a contributor who'd offered to write a short history of the Alfa Sud factory near Naples. We had a couple of calls, exchanged emails for a week or two, before he finally agreed that he'd be willing to write the piece himself, but that it would be meaningless without context, so he'd have to write the history of the Portello and Arese factories first. We worked closely on those articles, which grew in scope as he meticulously planned and researched them. We talked about the cars, of course, and the people behind them, and about economics and labour relations and politics. Sadly, he was unable to complete the second part of the Pomigliano article, and I was faced with the daunting task of putting together a fitting tribute to a legend. I needn't have worried. All I had to do was to ask his many friends to tell the story of his impact on their lives and on our club. I've just finished my 27th issue of the magazine and have started working on my 28th, but the October 2020 issue, Volume 54, Issue 5, of the magazine he took over and edited from Volume 2 to Volume 13, will always be the one of which I'm most proud. Bill Smith, who worked with him closely in the creation of the club's online archive, described him as a legend, a mentor, and a friend, and I can't think of a better summary. That's all for this week. We'll be back in 3 weeks' time on Sunday the 23rd of October, when we'll be talking to Ian Willis from the club's long-term insurance partners, Chris Knott. Episode 66 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else good podcasts are found. Until then, stay safe.